Welcome in, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Hope all of you guys are doing well. Please feel free to get any questions that you might have into the Q&A, and we will answer them in the order that they are received. My name's Hannah. I'll be leading today's Wednesday workshop. Awesome. We got a question right away. Let's go ahead and hop right into it. When in a property, how to know which task template brought in a particular task. Right now I'm using a tag. Each one of my task templates has a tag made for it. For example, my S financing task has made me create a TTS financing tag that I apply to all the tasks in that template. This is becoming awkward as I'm breaking up my task templates to handle more smaller, specific topics so I can better customize what's applied to a property based on each agent's and their brokerage's needs. My tag list is starting to get very, very long. So when it comes to tasks on a property, there's a couple different ways that we can kind of like know which tasks belong to which task template. I'm going to go ahead and pop open, I think second termination actually has quite a number of tasks on here. When we talk about our tasks, our tags, okay, we're like, obviously, yeah, you could end up having like quite a number on here. But what I want you to see with my tags is that I have tried to neutralize and make it easier for me to be able to know what's happening with this. So I have two separate tags. I have a seller tag and I have a main under contract tag. And I also have a separate financing tag. So when you look at your tags, what I would suggest is instead of having it set up where it's a TTS financing tag, you would have a financing tag that's just for any tasks that have to do with financing. And then you would have a seller tag that would be for any tasks that have to do with sellers, right? The TT, I'm not sure what that particular portion means. Maybe TT is meant to stand for task template. If it is, I don't think you necessarily need the TT in the naming conventions of your tags because technically you know that this is the part of a task template. Now when it comes to like knowing like, okay, well, so that's good, Anna, cool. This is how you'd set up your tags. This is how you'd suggest it. How do I still know which tags are or tasks are with the other, not with because these are all seller main under contract ones. Like how do I see what the task might be assigned to? So if I look through this task template here, we can see that I only have one task template assigned, and that's the seller under contract, right? Right. So here, when we click on all tasks, this is going to show us that list of all of the tasks that are currently applied to this particular property. And I would go through and I would select whichever task template it was. Again, maybe this isn't a good example. Let me see if I have a bunch of tasks on this one. Here we go. This is another example. So if I wanted to see, I just wanted to hyper focus on one of my task templates, my inspection task template. I'm going to click on my inspection task template, and now I'm only seeing the tasks that have to do with inspection. And another thing I would say is if you have 20 task templates that are all related to financing and you have that all related on one property, that's a little concerning. What are each one of those tasks pertaining to? Is it like a task template that has like one task on it that has to do with one particular part of the financing that is only applicable during certain cases? I would definitely want to take a look at what your setup is, Natalie, when it comes to that, because the idea is that here you'd be able to use the filtering here to be able to see which task template and all of the tasks that are encompassed in it. Like if I go to appraisal, these are my 4 appraisal tasks. And then I could also use the tags to filter it as well. So when you're kind of going through and you're trying to figure out, okay, which task template is this financing task or is this particular task related to, I would use these to filter down those tasks and see, okay, when does it disappear kind of thing. Instead of, having it tagged with, a specific tag that's related to the task template. Unless, of course, you're finding yourself updating your task templates a lot. That's kind of a little different. When we talk about updating our task templates, I usually suggest, like, number one, you're going to make note of what the task's name is. You would probably use some sort of filtering here to try to help yourself identify the task. As you can see, I've got like home protection plan. I know that this is part of my home protection task template because I only have one task in it. But if we had like tasks and we weren't sure where they came from, again, I would kind of go through and I try to identify it from here. by like using the ability to like filter it down and just see, okay, what's on this particular task template this way. I definitely want to see the way that you have your task template set up though. If you have like multiples of stellar financing tasks or just financing tasks in general being applied to a property. I know in some cases when we have like dual transactions, we definitely need to be able to see the difference between those two. And depending on how you manage it, you could manage it that you have a buyer side in there and a seller side at the same time. It just kind of depends. Awesome. I'm not seeing any other. Let me know if that makes sense on how. Okay, good. Okay, that's what I was waiting for. Yeah. When in a property, click on the internal details of the task, and a window comes up with a lot of options on the left. Side, title, internal details, task, template tag. What is template used for? It's only function of assigned to task template used for. Okay, so when on a property, and I click on the internal details, here it says title, that's the title of it, the date, internal details, assigned to. Huh. I didn't even know that this was here, actually, if I'm being honest with you. I don't know what this would do. I have never seen this option here. Kelly, have you seen this option?
I have not seen that option, but reading that you can assign or reassign this task to an applied template is actually pretty exciting.
Is it? I wonder if it's only, it should be only specific to this property, right?
I don't know. I've never seen it before.
Never seen this before, Natalie. Thank you for bringing this out. We should, you want to grab a screenshot of this really quickly, Kelly, and post it in product
Uh,
slips and say, what is this?
the funny thing, I know we deployed some stuff this weekend, so maybe
For sure. I know that yeah, we
maybe
definitely
that was
had some
it.
updates, but what were those updates? Our changelog trigger file. Uh, oh, task template categories. Assign new task templates to selected categories in a filtered view. No, that shouldn't have anything to do with it. This is I'm yeah, this I'm stumped. I have no idea what this is or why it would be here because it would be great if this would actually show you which task template this particular task was assigned to. Maybe that's the intended use behind it, but it's not set up yet because this should say like, oh, I don't even know which one I selected. Buyer financing tasks. When I click on the internal details, I would hope that this would say buyer financing tasks, but it didn't. So maybe we'll look into this and see. Maybe this is the intended use behind this particular tool, but we haven't like seen it in action yet. Or maybe it's meant to be for all future transactions. Because sometimes, when we make updates to the system, sometimes when we make updates like that, it can be something that like for all future transactions after this update, they're going to have the ability to, for in this case, I would say maybe see the task template that it's related to, because this would help you. Then you don't need to have all those
Yeah.
tags. If you wanted to see which task template that particular task was made for, you could see that here. I know that I've gotten a lot of questions of like, I don't know which task template or task template this was a part of. Like, so I'm not sure yet. This is maybe more tracking that we're trying to implement into open to close. I just wonder if it's maybe not completely done yet. I'm not sure. I've
Thinking
not seen
out
this.
loud, I wonder if this would be a good idea if you create a new task that is not in a template at all, and then
Yeah.
being able to add it to that, an already existing task template.
Do we want to do a test? So like my home protection plan has like one task on it. Let's just add in another task and say this is a test from, and then let me grab the property address. Okay. And we'll mark it critical and pinned. Oh, I just closed out of that. Submit. Get that task on there. Cool. We're going to go to our details. We're going to go to template. We're going to grab this. We're going to add this to our home protection task template. I'm just going to update the color on it. All right, let's go see if that's actually in our task template now. It's gonna blow my mind if that's the case.
That's what I was thinking. This is gonna be cool.
I'm gonna like have a okay, good. I was like gonna have a panic attack if that was the case. Because again, like that's a
Okay.
great tool. Don't get me wrong. Having that to be able to organize it on the property, fantastic tool. Having that where people can go in and add on, I don't even know where the task, I guess the task disappeared.
Yeah.
Having it so that you can update a task template from a property, that's a little scary.
Yeah.
That I say that that's property, if I filter it again, it doesn't add it to it. So I'm just like, what is that tool? What do you do? What do you do? So I'm wondering if it is like what I said, where it says assigned to task template.
That says
I wonder,
financing. Did we
it
look in the
says
wrong task template?
maybe, but I said it was for home protection, didn't I?
You did, but when you went back just then, it said financing.
You are so right, Barbie. What is happening with it?
Okay,
Nope.
not
See,
good.
it's not, okay. So let's go back to financing, the financing task template. Here's buyer financing task template. It would be pinned at the top and it would be a
And
different
it's
color.
not.
Yeah.
Huh.
Interesting.
Hmm. Okay, well, I put in the question.
Yeah. And I mean, if Natalie saw it, then that's been there for a while. So I'm curious about, at least it's been there before I checked it, but I don't know how long. When was the first time you saw that, Natalie, in the system? Was that just today or was that like when you were going through and you're updating your task templates from the property? Feel free to pop that in whenever you get a chance, because I'm super curious as to when that tool came in there. Because again, like changelog, I don't think I saw anything about task assignment. Yeah, no, I don't see anything with task assignment. What is this? What is this? What is this? You have the option manual, blah, 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 blah. New create task but not applied properly. You can mark the task critical afterwards. The task, maybe it has something to do with this. When was this? No, that was in February. I don't think it was in February. A few days ago. Okay. Okay. We'll have to check on that. We'll wait to hear back from our team to explain to us exactly what that tool is intended use for. Because I don't think I've seen that before, and it sounds like Kelly hasn't seen it before either. So both of us are a little like, oh, cool. What are you? um, awesome. It looks like we've got another question. Should terminated cancellation tasks be included as a part of the intake form? I joined after the current system was already set up, and it looks like these tasks aren't being triggered when the status is changed. I've tried adjusting this twice, but they aren't pulling in as expected. What's the best way to move forward to ensure these tasks are captured moving forward? Yes, great question. So it kind of depends on what plan you're on. So let's address that first. If we're talking about you being on the Grow or the Pro plan, you're technically going to have a lot of your task automation happen within your tasks. If you're on the Scale plan, it runs a little bit different, but not super different, because when we talk about using the Scale plan and we're updating or we're updating our statuses, I'm going to go to this one because this is my second termination. You're on Scale plan. Awesome. So we'll address this as if it's Scale plan, but we'll also talk about it for Grow and Pro as well. So if here I'm on this transaction, this terminate, right? I need to remove this task template. I also need to update the contract status. When I go to change this contract status, I'm just going to change it to under contract, and then I'm going to swap it back. So under contract, it's actually terminated. I'm going to say contract terminated. When I give us that check mark, we get this list of options. We get the ability to delete uncompleted tasks, delete all tasks, or remove API from calendar. So when we talk about removing the tasks, if you're on the Scale plan and you're using a combination of tasks and triggers, when you go to update this, this is just specifically talking about the tasks. This is not talking about triggers. So it's specifically referring to tasks. So when we go through and we say we want to remove them, if I say delete all uncompleted tasks, it should not affect our trigger pipeline, which is this guy right here, right? So if you see here, earnest money still asking for it, EMD is still asking for it. But technically we don't need those triggers anymore because this is canceled. So the way that you would want to build out your system is that you would want to have a specific trigger that comes up when the contract status is equal to terminated, and that trigger would go through and remove any other task templates or any other trigger templates that you might have on that particular property. And then it would apply that terminated trigger, your terminated triggers and your terminated tasks. So I'm going to go ahead and just build out a trigger and say it's going to add or remove templates and say add. It's going to, we want it to, again, I think I have like we're just going to grab the task template for terminated contracts because I don't have like a trigger template for it. And then we're going to grab that sample, these trigger templates here. When I have them set up this way, we want to add the terminated tasks. But for sample property triggers, HOA triggers, we want to remove these. Oh, looks like I don't have that option though. It's a manual delete. That's right. Right now it's a manual delete. It's one thing that I'm in conversations with Dev about updating and changing because technically if it's through a trigger and we can fire it off, we should have the ability to remove the triggers as well. The hard part about it is do you need all of those? So I'd probably say if you're on the scale account, you would still want a trigger like this, right? And this one would have the status, property field, contract status is equal to terminated so that this trigger can come up and be in the ready to go area. So here it is. Here's that trigger saying we want to add on the seller terminated task template because our contract status is equal to terminated. And then most likely right now, I'd say we're going to trash can this or any of the other triggers that you have on here. Either that or you fire this off and then you turn off all the other triggers. The only problem is and this is actually like a really good point for us to take a look at because how are we meant to handle this if the status changes and we need to hide? Again, I'm just going to turn those all back on. We don't need these two other triggers on here that's asking for EMD or saying that the EMD status is necessary. Since this is a terminated contract, we just need this task template and possibly a trigger template. Again, I don't have one of those just yet for this particular account, but a trigger template for terminated. So I'd almost say I should probably bring this back to developers and talk with Andrew as well about, hey, how are we going to manage this? What are your guys' strategies? Kelly, do you have a strategy for how to handle this?
My processes was I needed to turn off all the current triggers. Oh no, because I remember turning off triggers, but I remember having things applied at the same time. So I had to have done it somehow.
You might have, and again, like it kind of depends on like how we have it. I would say that this would probably be our best bet, which is we update the status. We have this trigger here that says that the seller terminated task template and trigger template is there. We go up to the health bar and we see, and I'm not seeing that trigger up here either for this one. Let me just say it's due. Maybe it's not showing up. It's not due.
I want to say I used a date. I used not just the contract status, but I want to say I used a date too, like the date that it was canceled to help me get around that and turning the triggers on and off. I do know because I do know when I changed the status to canceled, I did use that opportunity to turn off the triggers and delete whatever tasks I needed to then. So I might have done that using a date because I had the date canceled in there.
Yeah, like the cancellation date. Yeah. I think the thing that I'm kind of running into as well is just that I don't see that this template is going up to the health bar. And I'm not able to select on whether it's due 1 day, 2 days, or due immediately. So I think that there's some functionality that I need to go back and check on with my team and be like, hey, how are we supposed to do this? How, like right now, the way that we're seeing it is that we should be able to have it that this trigger would go up to the health bar when we update that contract status. That way you don't have to worry about, what if this is like buried beneath like 3 or 4 triggers? I want you to be able to see it right away. let's go ahead and exit off this property. I'm just going to refresh really quickly and let's go back over to it. Triggers, does it still filter it at the top? I just don't know if it's filtering it at the top because I just added in that trigger, or if it's because of because it's meeting the conditions. I don't know if it's a priority trigger because it's one for templates. So there's some additional testing that I'll need to do on my end to clarify for it. What I would say right now with this is that I would still use that contract status and update it to contract terminated. I would have it that it deletes all uncompleted tasks. And then when you go over to your triggers here, I would still have a trigger that's built out to apply your seller terminated contract tasks templates and adding on that trigger template. And then, so the task coming in was working for us, but stopped working a few weeks ago or so. Maybe an update is conflicting. Possibly. It's something that I'd have to check on. If you could identify exactly when you say a few weeks ago, was it 2 weeks ago? Was it 3 weeks ago? That would be extremely helpful for me, because then I can go through and be like, hey, it looks like we had an update. Certain things for functionality wise are no longer working that way. They're working a different way, which is fine. But how are we meant to handle it? Because there's been quite a number of updates, especially to the system and how things work. I know that we've had a lot of conditions have had updates recently. It's just with this, I had totally had the assumption that we were going to be able to say, if it's seller terminated, we could have it that it removes. Task templates it will remove. Trigger templates it will not remove. So interesting.
You could potentially, could you put the property trigger template on the task, on like a task in the task template?
Maybe. You're totally right. Let's do that.
And I have an answer of, I heard back from support and development about that.
Oh, what the thing is?
Yes.
Yay. Okay, so let's build this out really quickly though. So I'm gonna have this when the task is completed that it add or removes templates. And I want it to remove, I have a feeling this is gonna work the same way, but let's try it. Nope. We do not have the functionality to remove the property triggers. But I don't want you guys to have to build out your property triggers with the contract status on them. That's messy.
I just remember turning them all off and then applying the new
And then just manually
property trigger somehow. Maybe I did do it manually.
It would have to either be a manual apply, or your process would be this. The contract has like gone under terminated, right?
Yeah.
You remove all of the tasks, or you apply your terminated triggers, and then you go to your trigger template and you say turn off. But I just the flow for it, that's just so clunky. I really have to check with my team and figure out why we're not able to remove property templates or property trigger from a trigger, right? From one of these, why can't we remove the trigger templates?
I know this sounds crazy, but would we be able to do that with secondary intake forms? Like, what if we filled out a secondary intake form if our transaction canceled?
Oh my gosh, you're so right. Kelly, coming in with the strategy. That's the whole idea behind this.
I love secondary intake forms. I have so many ideas for them.
Shonda, that's what I'm gonna say. I think you could use the secondary intake form. I think you update the contract status and you delete all the existing tasks. You go over to your triggers and you can turn them all off. Right? You can turn them all off. And then your process is to fill out a secondary intake form. That way you can make sure that you've got the correct kinds of document templates get applied, the new tax template. Not yet, but you can get a secondary intake form. All you have to do is reach out to support. And as long as you're a subscribed user and you have, what was the other one? Oh, you have to be on Grow, Pro, or Scale, which you already are on Scale. You'll get access to it. Not only that, everyone, secondary intake forms is going to be live like next month. We're in the process of getting feedback. If any of you guys are still interested in getting into that, absolutely feel free to reach out to us and support. We will get you onto it. We'll get you the training for it so you can kind of look into it and see how it works and see how you can set it up. But I agree with Kelly. Secondary intake forms would be how I would handle this. That way you can ask those additional questions that you need to ask, and you can set it up that you don't have to worry about getting an email. Hey, we actually terminated. The agent can go in and they can submit an intake form that you guys can review and go, oh, contract terminated. Oh, that sucks. Cool. Thanks for sending over the termination documents and the dates and everything for it. I'll make sure to update the property. And that's actually a brilliant way to do it. Thank you, Kelly. That's the way we want to handle it. Let's not worry about the triggers, the task templates at all. Let's go straight forward for that secondary intake form. Yay. Okay, so we got an answer from Deb. That's what you had mentioned, right? Let me go back over to
And
product.
it's not the greatest news. Obviously, we know the feature is currently not working, but there is a ticket for it, and Dev jumped right in, and I think they're working on it right now because I brought it up. So good things coming.
Okay, cool. So is it the intended use was that it was meant to be like
That is the only unfortunate part. They didn't tell me what the intended use was.
That's so funny. Okay.
Just that they're trying to fix it.
Okay, no worries. Then maybe I have a feeling that's exactly what it is, what I
I
thought
do
it was,
too.
where you go to the internal details, because right now right now, similar to what Natalie's running into, it is difficult to know without color coordination and without very specific tagging. Like I don't have a tag on this one. I just know what this one is, but I don't have tags on some of my tasks, right? And unless I'm super familiar with my process, or I don't have that many task templates to keep on top of, it can be difficult to keep on top of like which task does this particular which template does this particular task belong to? Sorry, there's a lot of T's there. And I have a feeling that this particular template here, this is meant to be that, hey, this is what this is. It belongs to this task template, but it's not working as intended right now. Because when I saw the reassign, that's what made me think, okay, is this supposed to indicate this belongs to this task template, but we can reassign it if we'd like to? Right? Maybe there's an instance where you need to delete something, but you want to keep a specific task, or you've just added on a new task and you want to add it to a task template on that property. Because if you guys, and most of you guys probably have not done this, and that's totally fine, but if we go over to our three dot icon right here, and we go to completed, this is our completed tasks, but they can still show these tasks here. And sometimes when we look at our completed tasks, if we need more details, I want you guys to be able to look up those details to see, okay, well, what are these completed tasks? Or what were the deleted tasks that came on here? Kind of thing. And that, I think that that's just for transparency's sake. It also might have something to do with the other part of access, which hopefully, oh, not access, I'm sorry, activity. It possibly has something to do with this a little bit as well. Because technically, if we can relate that task, maybe it has something to do with us being able to see, you know, here we can see an example of like, it shows that I've completed this task and this task. So maybe it'll have something to do with this too. Oh, I love that it shows the documents that I have to opened it as well. I haven't scrolled down on this list in a while. I obviously have only opened up this property and done really nothing else with it. Cool. Awesome. So we'll wait to hear back on that. Like I mentioned, there's a couple betas that are going on right now too. So we've got beta for secondary intake forms, which depending on how things go, will either wrap up sooner than later, and we'll be able to see that feature live and open and close within the next month. Next month being November. And then the other beta that we have right now is mobile. If you're a team member, okay, not agents just yet. We're still working on agent portal. There's a lot of things with that that's like really cool and really awesome, but we want to make sure that it's fully functional before we push it out to you guys. But if you guys are a team member and you want to know what it looks like to use that mobile app, or you want to get on the mobile app beta, I would definitely reach out to our open to close support team as well and just say, hey, I'm interested in mobile app beta. The way that mobile app beta works, it's slightly different. There's a little bit more setup involved with making sure that it's working appropriately for you guys. So I'll kind of talk about that a little bit while we don't have questions, and then we'll go over some of our FAQs for today. So if you're interested in mobile, how do I get that set up? How does that work, Hannah? First things first, you're obviously going to reach out to us in support, but there's going to be some information that we need to know about your phone and what kind of phone that you have. The main things that we need to know is if you're an Apple user, or an Android user. The next thing we'll need to know is what email or what account do you have associated with them, right? So if you're an Apple user, what's your Apple user email? When we send you or add you to that beta program, we're going to make sure to add that email, that Apple account, and say this one can use the beta for our open to close app. And then you'll get an email from us saying, hey, here's the link to download our open to close beta app. For Android, similar case. We're going to need to know that email that's associated with your Android phone, right? That's like on your Play Store. So like for me, for example, it's not my work email. It's my personal email that's associated with my phone because it's my phone. And I want to make sure that I have access to my phone and, you know, have access to my emails, my personal emails on my phone. So that was the email that I shared with our developers so that they could then go and send me a link to download the open to close mobile app. Mobile app has a lot of really cool functionality in it. You can fill out intake forms. You can fill out secondary intake forms. You can do data requests and update fields now from the mobile app. And that's what I mean by like, we still are working on the agent side. Obviously, we want it that those requests come in as requests, not as published changes. You can see I've got a data request here. So property change values, we're going to have something similar to this where the agent can send a request over. Maybe they're updating information on it. They want to say that actually there is no HOA. Sorry, I said yes, but there is none. And then you guys will have an approval process where you'll be able to say, okay, agent, sure, I'll approve this, or no, I'm not approving this. There is an HOA. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know why you said there wasn't one. So there's a little bit more work to be done specifically with the agent version of this, but the mobile app for team members is pretty keyed in, I'd say right now. We're just doing some testing and it'd be great to get some feedback from you guys who are like, I'm on the go. And I fill out the intake forms from my phone. I kind of want to test that out. Awesome. I think that those are the two main betas that we have right now. We might have a couple more betas before the end of the year. But I will, you know, we'll either have a webinar or we'll have an announcement on Facebook, or we will also talk about it on Wednesday workshop when those webinars are up. But like I said, if you're interested in them, you're going to reach out to support. There's two qualifying things that you need to have met. You need to be you need to be a subscriber to open to close. We're not able to activate secondary intake forms in trial accounts. So you have to be a subscriber. Same thing with the mobile app. You'll have to be a subscriber to open to close to get access to that mobile app. Number two, you either need to be on the Grow, Pro, or Scale account. To see that, you're going to go to your little person icon. You're going to go to Plan and Billing, and then you'll see which account you're on right here. So as long as you're on Grow, Pro, or Scale, then you'll be able to access the secondary intake forms and the mobile app. For any of you guys who are on the previous pricing plan, if you're like, I'm really interested in the secondary intake forms, how do those work? Feel free to also reach out to our support and see if you can get on a call with us and we can talk about the change and what that looks like in the switch. Or you can just ask questions here on Wednesday workshop. What does that look like? I'm on premium. I want to switch over to Grow. What am I going to see? What's going to be new in my account kind of thing. And I can update the account that we're on right now to Grow so that it's reflected appropriately. That way you guys can see, you know, only the stuff that has to do with Grow. Because right now we see all the scale stuff in here. We see that, you know, the messaging tool that we have here. And, you know, when we go to the properties, we see our triggers and we see our messaging, which those wouldn't be available on the Grow plan. Those are specific to Scale. Cool. Alrighty, so looks like we've got some FAQs. Ooh, I've actually seen this one twice on my calls with some of you guys, so I think that this is a good one to go over. I have an intake form, but it doesn't trigger when I have multiple choice. Let me show you an example of a multiple choice. I'm going to go to our buyer under contract, and I'm pretty sure I have it built out on this one. I really hope I do. We're going to our buyer under contract, and if I indicate that yes, we do have inspections, another question should pop up for me here. Asks what type of inspections, and if I select these, this is an example of a multiple choice question. Multiple choice questions do not work as conditions. Why don't they work as conditions, Hannah? Because the number of options that you could have for this, I mean, I would have to do the math, and I'm not very good at it when it comes to this type of thing, if I'm being honest with you. But it's up there in like the hundreds, right? In this case, with 5, because it could be only general. It could be general and pest. It could be general pest and pool. It could be general pest and pool and radon. It could be general pest, pool, radon, roof. It could be only pest, pool, radon, roof. It could be only pool, radon, roof. Do you see how many options we've all of a sudden unlocked because it's multiple choice? That's one of the main reasons it does not work with our conditions. It's just not built out that way. So if you have something like this, what I would usually suggest is if you know that the add-ons are going to have separate task templates, we're going to need to ask about what types of inspections we have separately. Okay. But this is a great example. If you're like, when I'm ordering the general, I order the pest, the pool, and the radon and the roof all at the same time. Right? It's all one process. I reach out to one guy, or I reach out to two guys in the same area. As long as I see what types of inspections they are, I can send out two different emails. One of them goes out for my general guy, and the other one goes out for these additional add-ons, right? That's when this is appropriate. But like if we had something like septic or well, and you needed a specific person separate from the home inspector, then that might be a process where we would want to have a separate question that says, is there septic on site? Is there well on site? Do we need inspections for either of those processes? And then that way you can make sure that your task templates populate appropriately. But I would say like we want to try to steer away from using multiple choice when it comes to we need to add on more things. If you are in a situation where you're like, I know I need documents or tasks, or I need to send out emails with smart blocks that have to do with the multiple choice, don't use multiple choice because it's not going to work. It doesn't work right now. So keep that in mind when we're looking at this. Multiple choice is great for us to see it so that we know that this needs to be ordered, but it's not great for using our conditions to be able to populate further on the transaction. Okay. Cool. Hopefully that clicked. Awesome. I have a field template, but how can I apply an intake form trigger? There is no option to add a field template to an intake form. When we talk about field templates, it's not something that I touch on very often, but field templates are something that can be used when you're using property templates. Or let's say you're technically an external user using something like an external, or not an external user, you're using like external intake forms, and depending on how it sets up, you might need to use property templates here. Right? You might need to use a field template. It depends on how you have those properties coming in to open to close. With secondary intake forms and OCR coming in, things are going to kind of shift for that when it comes to your outside intake forms coming into open to close. If you're using the outside intake forms, you're using something like interface to populate your properties, you can technically fill out a secondary intake form, and then that'll populate the property with the fields that you need, tasks that you need, documents that you need. Just to check, because I know we have someone that works on those, Kelly. Do you think that people who are typically on interface right now, do you think that they'll be using secondary intake forms to populate the property? Or right now, are we typically using property templates to populate it?
Well, it depends. If we can get them on the secondary intake forms, we're doing that with some of it, but
Awesome.
interface does have their own secondary type intake form, so we're being very cautious of that, and the client
Okay, cool.
chooses which they want to do.
Awesome. Awesome. So regardless, you still might need to use property templates to like populate the property. Is that correct?
Correct.
Cool. So field templates are a great use for when you're using property templates. And what is a field template? A field template's just saying what fields do you want to add to the property. And in this example, for this particular one, I think I have all of the fields selected. Okay, I only have a couple of the fields. These are new fields that I added in here, so that's why those aren't selected. But the fields that are selected, this was original to the account when I created my open a close account. This particular template came in with our pre-built account. So it's not going to have any of the new fields that I added in here, but it should have most of my fields that I had, like, that came in with the account. But this is usually the use case for this is going to be like if you need to populate that property with fields, it's specifically being used for property templates. When we use our intake form, we're not using a field template to populate our fields. We're either selecting our fields, right? So here we have an example underneath our critical details. These are fields that are selected. Both we're asking them on the intake form, we're also bringing them onto the property. If I scroll all the way down, I know I have a field section that comes on all the time. Doesn't? Okay, cool. We're going to say that it does. Closing details. I need that to come on to every single one of my properties regardless, right? So here, if I select all here, this is going to say all of these, the closing details, they need to come on every single time. For an example with our HOA details, I'm just going to grab the name of this. HOA details are only applicable when we have an HOA. So instead of having it that it comes on all the time, which we don't want that, we only want it to come on when there's an HOA, we would build out a form trigger. And I would have a form trigger. I know I have one. Maybe I don't. I have not one for the fields. Cool. We would want to build out a form trigger for bringing on our HOA field. So I'll say choose action here. When it's submitted by the agent, I want to add a field section. The field section that I want to add is HOA details. Selecting that. Ooh, there we go. Adding it on there. And we would want to have a form trigger that adds on our HOA details. We would want to make sure that we have a condition that says if HOA is equal to yes, we'll actually just type in HOA. Here we go. Is there an HOA equal to yes? So we would want to have a form trigger built out to add on our field section if it meets the condition. So in this case, it says if the property field HOA is equal to yes, then we would want to bring on this field section. I'm going to go ahead and sort out my fields. We're just going to drag it down here. That's fine. And then now I have it that, again, if there's an HOA, then it adds that on. If we scroll down, I've got a couple triggers in here that don't have conditions on them. And that's just to add on some of those details, right? These are just the field sections that I would need every single time. My commission details, earnest money, property details, critical details. But if I keep scrolling down here, we can see that there's a couple more triggers that will add on those fields based off of certain conditions. So here I've said if the financing type is not equal to cash, then I need my financing detail section. This is how we're populating that property with our fields, which is why I make the suggestion of making sure that you have all of your dates and any of those fields in their specific field section. When we talk about building out form triggers, the easiest way to make sure that we have all of the fields on the property is by working with a field section versus building out an individual field trigger. Field triggers are good, right? This is just to add on or remove one specific trigger. This one's good, right? This one says, are there any seller paid closing costs equal to no? If it's no, then we need to remove the seller concessions. Seller concession lives underneath another field section, and I don't necessarily need it on the property. I don't want to have to worry about it. So you can build out these little kind of mini triggers to pull off individual fields if you need to, but I always suggest dealing in positives instead of negatives, right? So will there be an inspection? Yes. Then I want my inspection details to come on here. We don't want to have it that, oh, well, I have the field selected to come on every single time for my inspections, right? I have all my fields. They're going to come on every single time with my inspections. And then I'm going to deal with the negatives and say, if inspections are equal to no, then remove the field section. We don't want to, that's extra work. We want to do it that if we need it, then add it on type of thing. If we don't need it, if we've said no, then we don't have to worry about it coming on at all. Cool. Next FAQ, or if there's any other follow-up questions to that, definitely feel free to get that in to the Q&A. Okay, property table view. I'm having some issues with the filtering and the way that it looks. I'm just not sure about it. There are a couple things with the property table view that have stumped like even me. Like I'm not even gonna lie. And one of the main ones that got us for a long time was this. So you go to your property table view and you're like, okay, well, I have this arrow and I know about this and I set up my filter, but like, I don't see any of my tables anymore. They're gone. My segments are gone. And it had to do with toggling this option here to see it or to not see it. I know that that's an interesting tool that we have. I think it's just so that we can make like, if we needed to see more properties on the screen, you've already toggled it. Like you can toggle it closed and then now you'll have more space to see more properties on this screen right here. But this has been a big one that's gotten a couple of our clients. So if you've ever looked at your property tables and you're panicking because you're like, I can't get to my segments, Hannah, where did they go? Try to check that toggle right here. This is just gonna show our segments or not.
I would be one of those
Yeah,
who did that a
it,
long time
it's
ago.
happened. Yeah, it's definitely it's a lot more commonplace than you would think.
And it's
It's
so funny because it's so easy and it's like one you never touch ever. And then the minute you
yep.
like accidentally touch something on your screen and everything's gone or
You're like,
changed,
ah,
and then you're like,
where
help.
did it go? No, that one, another big one has actually been the field section.
Yep,
The other one was
exactly.
the other big one was like the field section is collapsible, which again, in some cases that's kind of helpful. Depends on what
Very.
you're looking at, right?
Especially when you're on your laptop somewhere and you need like a skinnier screen and don't want to scroll or something. So they
Exactly.
are all beneficial.
Yeah. We have reasons
Know
behind
about
it.
them.
There are purposes. Or if you're using a tablet too and you're
Yes.
accessing it pretty close, I feel like that too, like a small laptop or tablet or anything like that. Yeah, having the ability to kind of squeeze the screen a little bit and get more information on there is definitely helpful. But yeah, I think that this has been one of the major ones that I've seen is that when this gets toggled, everyone's like, whoa, where did it go? And I imagine this is kind of what this person might have run into for this FAQ, which was, hey, things are looking different on my property tables and segments. What did I do wrong? So I would say, obviously, if you run into that situation, reach out to support. We'll help you out. We'll be able to see it in your account if this was toggled open or closed. The other thing I think that's kind of going on with this with filters, it just has to do with these filters, right? Right now I have active listing selected. I also have a buyer's under contract and I also have a closed. Let's say I wanted to see from my active listing, I wanted to see my active seller under contract. When I'm on active listing and I say create a new segment and I call this the seller under contract, and I say submit, what I want you guys to take notice is that the filters stay on there. Okay. So here we see contract status is still set to listing and pre-listing. And that's why we're still seeing our listing and our pre-listing here. So when we talk about filters, when we create those segments, if we create them off of a different segment, we have a segment selected, we're creating it off of that. Or if we have it created off of our transactions, if we have filters here for our transactions and we create a segment, those filters hold. Okay. They hold on to it. They hold on to that information. They go, do you need this? Are you sure? You don't want to update your contract status, right? You need this for your new filter. So when it comes to this, we're going to just want to update it. So we'll go ahead and go to edit. We can remove those two options. We'll select under contract. We'll say close. Now this is going to update and show us our under contract. And if I toggle away from it, I'm going to click on our drop down, go back to active listings. Active listings did not change. It's going to hold on to those filters. Then if I go back to my seller under contract, it's going to hold on to that filter. So it could have been something like that as well. I know that some people might run into that issue. The other thing that I would keep in mind when we're talking about our filters is our date range. We're going to select our range first. Okay. So I'm going to go back over to our transactions. So it shows us all of our transactions here. And then I'm going to go into date range. And if I say year to date, once I select year to date, then I can select the date filter field. Right now it's going based off of created, but if I say year to date, date filter field, and then I select edit, now I'll be able to see the other fields. If I did not select a date range, I can't select any other date to look at other than the created date. So I need to select a range first. So that could be the issue too. Maybe you're looking for specific filters and you're like, I don't see it. Why can't I pull this up? I just want to see things that have been closed, this month. I want to see my properties under contract. I'm going to look for contract date for October. Now I see, okay, cool. It's just Jackson. That was the one that's based off of contract date. So we'll want to make sure that we select our date range first, and then we'll have all of the other options to select any other date with an open and close.
I have another surprising one too that I didn't encounter until recently. I have a client that doesn't use contract status, but instead uses property stage. But
Oh,
because we have those 8 fields that are permanent or
unchangeable.
required, and you can't change the actual, that contract status is what it's going by. So they need to rethink that property stage equals contract status when they're on the property table. So that was
Yeah.
something I found interesting, slightly confusing until we figured out what was going on, but made sense once we caught it.
No, for sure. That's like a really great point. Cause like when we talk about the language, like technically, if I go into my field editor, I can name my contract status whatever I want, technically, right? I can update the field label, but that won't reflect everywhere else in the system. That's just for the field label on the property. So I'm going to update it for all of the other areas, like Kelly was saying, in the property tables. It's not going to update this to say property stage anymore. It's not going to do it for the task pipeline. It's not going to do it for our reporting. It doesn't update those types of things when we talk about the language for that. So yeah, I would say like there's certain. It's funny that as you start to use the system more, you do kind of find out that while everything is absolutely customizable, there's a couple parts that are not able to be altered, and that's one of them. Yeah, is changing the language here. This is like hard coded into the interface of the like what open to close looks like. This is UI. We can't alter that, but we can definitely update this name if you really want to. Contract status, you can definitely update that name if you need to on the property. And I believe it updates it here. We'd have to test.
It
I
does.
think it updates it here too, right? It
Yeah,
just
because
doesn't change it here.
there's said when I pulled like the contract status like that one, it said property stage there, but it was still reflecting contract status on the
Here.
filter. Yeah,
Yeah.
it does work that
Yeah.
way.
Cool. Alrighty, we're at our last like 9 minutes. Let me look at the rest of these because I think yeah, the rest of the questions are specifically talking about Google or issues with Google and connecting to Google. If you get the API 400 error when you try to send out emails from your Google, you may have updated your password. Um, yeah, you may have updated your password. You may have, updated something with your Google that severed the connection. And so you'll just want to reach out to support and we'll get you the links to be able to get yourself reconnected and refresh that connection. The other question has to do with Google Calendar. I don't have the ability to show Google Calendar in this account right now, just because I don't have my Google Workspace attached. So probably not the best example for that. But I would say like if you're having issues with your Google Calendar, also reach out to support and we can help you out from there. We did have some updates over the weekend. So if we head over to our little person icon, we go down to our change log. Here we're going to see the changes that happened on October 26th. There was just some updates with certain things on the way that they were working. So here you can see that we've got some updates to our conditions. We've got updates to our .loop profiles and resync button. Woo! I know that this was kind of a big thing for a couple people. Some people were seeing duplicates. Some people were not seeing the profiles that they needed to see. We got that resolved. We were able to figure out how to get it so that that resync, that refresh connection button is working. So if any of you guys are .loop users, great news for that. Task template and category, I think that that's just categorizing. I know that we were seeing some weirdness with that, so we updated that. Property tables and filters. I know that this was specific. So maybe this had to do with that other FAQ of like property tables are filtering interesting or they're filtering differently or I'm not seeing what they need to see. It seems that there was an intermittent issue where transactions were not showing up even if they met the criteria. And it looks like we figured out what the issue was and we've resolved that. And then finally, triggers and removing field section functions. Looks like some triggers were not firing off when conditions were met. Now things have been corrected. So if you guys were experiencing any of those issues, they've been altered now. So I definitely suggest like, yay. But also if you ever have any issues and you're like, has this been resolved yet? Definitely check the change log if you haven't reached out to us in support. Typically, we'll send you an email back. If you reached out and you said, hey, I'm a .loop user, things are broken, help, we'll usually reach out and be like, hey, just want to let you know, we resolved it. Everything's good now. You should be able to see what you need to see in your account. Cool. Let me see if there's any requests from implementation or onboarding. Are there any requests from you guys? Kelly, I don't see any on the list.
Not that we could think of this week. Everybody's
Cool.
doing
Cool,
really
cool.
good.
Yay, that's good to hear.
Always.
Awesome, guys. Alrighty, well, then let's do our end of call spiel. If you guys are looking for help, you can email us at help@open2close, or you can chat with us by using the chat icon here. I always suggest that if you're having issues in your system, if you can send us a Loom or a screen capture, screenshots, or even just tell us exactly where you're going or provide the property ID for us, that would be really, really helpful for us to be able to go in there and see what's going on. Here's where your property ID is. I haven't really showed that too often, but this is literally the link to go directly to that property. This property ID here is also related back to that property. So if you're like, it's an issue on a specific property, share this with us. You don't need to share the address if you don't want to, or if, you know, you've got multiple versions of it, right? Like I've got like this Kirksey Drive, I've got multiple versions of it. Each one of those versions of it has its own unique property ID. So if you're having an issue, share that with us if that's needed. We also just appreciate any information you can give us. Don't just reach out and say, my system's broken. What's broken about it? Tell us more. We want to help. If you're looking for more webinars like today's webinar, you're going to go over to our Open to Close website. You're going to go to our Learn tab and you're going to click on webinars. Then here you're going to see our webinars that are occurring. I just noticed that there was some updates to our Wednesday workshop, and I'm hoping that the link for you guys to join is going to stay the same. I will definitely let you guys know next week if it is not. It should be fine though. I think that we just need to extend our webinars. We're about to hit 60 webinars next week. Next week will be the 60th Wednesday workshop that we've had, which is just brilliant. It's such a fantastic milestone for us to meet. And I really appreciate all of you guys coming to it. Maybe we'll do some, maybe I'll have camera on and I'll wear like a party hat or something like that for you guys. Because I really appreciate you guys coming to this. This is how we improve. This is how we're able to help you guys improve and review some strategy with that. So yeah, if there's any other questions, I'll go ahead and hold on for like another minute. You can pop them in. If not, like I said, support is here to help you guys. And if worse comes to worse, they'll just loop me in and we'll end up getting on a call. Cool. Thank you guys. Have a happy Halloween tomorrow. Make sure to stay safe. If you don't celebrate, that's totally fine. If you do some other activities, hopefully that those go well as well. At the end of the day, really what we need to do is eat a bunch of candy tomorrow. Probably, drink some great beverages and eat pumpkin pie. That's your homework from me, is to definitely eat candy, pumpkin pie, and drink some cool drinks. If you go to a Halloween party, awesome. Awesome. Alrighty. Have a wonderful rest of your day, guys, and I will see you guys next week.